Chapter 1. The Night the Road Died. I still remember the exact second the air left the room. It was 7:42 p.m. on a Thursday in late May, the kind of warm North Carolina evening when the tree frogs are just getting started and the light inside the Willow Ridge clubhouse is that sickly fluorescent yellow that makes everyone look half dead. Karen Whitmore, 58, Cora lipstick, blazer the color of pool chlorine, was standing at the head table waving a stack of color-coded violation notices like she was Moses with new tablets. She wanted the membership to vote an emergency assessment of $38,000 per household to pay for the immediate removal of an illegal subterranean structure that was apparently undermining the structural integrity of the community's private roadway. The illegal structure was the tunnel I had spent the last 462 nights digging underneath the concrete barricade she'd had poured across the only county road to my farm. She was in full flight, voice climbing an octave every sentence, when I stood up from the back row, walked the aisle without hurry, and laid a single sheet of paper on the table in front of her. The letterhead was crisp black on heavy cream stock. North Carolina Department of Justice, Public Corruption Task Force. Paragraph 3 contained the sentence that made her manicured hand freeze mid-gesture. Preliminary forensic accounting indicates probable embezzlement of Homeowners Association funds in excess of $1.87 million between fiscal years 2018 and 2024. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The county sheriff, standing 2 steps behind me, cleared his throat and placed a second document beside the first. It was folded in thirds, the way legal papers always are, but the blue backing sheet was visible, and so was the word warrant in bold caps. Karen's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Nothing came out except a small, dry click. That was the moment every person in that room understood that the problem wasn't the tunnel anymore. The problem was what the backhoe had uncovered 42 feet beneath it 3 nights earlier, and whose initials were written in black Sharpie on the duct tape sealing 37 vacuum-packed bricks of $100 bills. Let me take you back to how any of this became necessary in the first place. I bought the farm in 2011 because I was finished with people who thought they owned the air you breathed. 20 years flying search and rescue helicopters for the Coast Guard had taught me 2 things. The ocean doesn't negotiate, and most problems look smaller from 1,000 feet up. When I finally hung up the flight suit, I wanted ground that belonged to me and nobody else. The place sat at the dead end of Old Mill Road, 180 acres of rolling pasture, mixed hardwood, and a 1940s farmhouse with heart pine floors and a porch wide enough to sleep on when the nights got too hot. The deed went clear to the center line of the road, same as it had since 1923 when my great-grandfather paid $4 an acre and a side of beef to a timber company that was happy to be rid of it. There were no covenants, no architectural guidelines, no yearly dues, just the sound of red-winged blackbirds at dawn and the creek talking to itself all night long. I fixed fences, planted fescue, bought 30 Angus cows on credit, and for 8 straight years I woke up owing exactly 0 explanations to another living soul. It was the closest thing to peace I had ever known. Then, Willow Ridge Estates arrived. They started clearing the ridge above my north field in the spring of 2019. At first, it was just orange ribbon and the occasional surveyor in a safety vest. Then came the model homes, the faux stone entrance with the cascading waterfall that ran 24 hours a day on a pump the size of a pickup truck, and the 400-page Declaration of Covenants that read like it had been written by someone who'd never actually met a human being. I didn't think much about it until the morning of March 17, 2020, when I came down the driveway with a trailer full of round bales and found an 8-foot concrete barricade stretched across Old Mill Road like someone had decided the world ended at my fence line. A bright orange sign bolted to the top read Willow Ridge Private Community, Residents and Approved Vendors Only. My mailbox was on the far side of it, So was the vet, the feed store, the school bus stop for my daughter, and every single way in or out that didn't involve 26 miles of logging trail through somebody else's timberland. I sat in the truck for a long minute, diesel idling, trying to decide if this was a prank. It wasn't. The letter arrived 2 days later on heavy cream stationery with the Willow Ridge logo embossed in gold foil. It informed me that Old Mill Road had been officially abandoned by the county in 1998 and was now private property owned in fee simple by the Willow Ridge Master Association. I was granted a revocable license to use the road, provided I paid a quarterly maintenance fee of $1,850 and submitted my vehicles for annual aesthetic review. The approved color palette was attached. Ford Racing Blue was not on it. I laughed so hard I had to pull over on the way to the co-op just to wipe my eyes. I still have that letter. It's in the folder I labeled Future Evidence in thick black Sharpie. The fine started a week later, $200 a day for unauthorized use of private roadway. They taped the notices to the barricade in clear plastic sleeves so the rain wouldn't ruin their stationery. My hay truck turned around and left. The vet canceled twice. The farrier stopped answering my calls. I was burning extra 8 gallons of diesel every trip to town and coming home with a migraine and a dashboard of orange paper. Sarah asked me one night if we should just sell. The kids were scared to ride the bus because the driver refused to idle on private property. I didn't have an answer that didn't sound insane. Chapter 2. The First Orange Notice. The first orange notice showed up on a Tuesday in April, taped to the barricade with so much clear packing tape it looked like it had been laminated by someone who really loved their job. I had to climb over the damn thing with a stepladder just to read it. The paper was heavy cardstock, bright safety orange, all caps screaming across the top, violation, unauthorized use of private roadway, $200 per day until compliance. Underneath, in slightly smaller font, it helpfully explained that my 1998 Ford F-250 Super Duty, license plate NC-HAY 884, had been photographed traversing Willow Ridge property without a valid access decal at 0647 that morning. They'd even printed the picture proof, a grainy black and white shot of my truck taken from what looked like a game camera strapped to a crepe myrtle. I stood there in muddy boots, coffee going cold in my hand, and laughed until the ladder wobbled. I took the notice home, smoothed it out on the kitchen table, and slid it into the manila folder I'd started the day the barricade went up. Sarah watched me do it without saying anything. She'd stopped asking if I was going to do something about 3 weeks earlier, when the answer had shifted from, "I'm handling it," to silence. The folder lived on the top shelf of the pantry now, next to the good whiskey we never opened. By the end of that first month, it was already an inch thick. The second notice came 3 days later. Same orange cardstock, same screaming capitals, but this time the violation was for unauthorized storage of agricultural equipment in view of community entrance. The equipment in question was my hay rake, parked exactly where it had been parked every spring since 2012, 30 feet inside my own fence line, half a mile from the barricade. They'd used a telephoto lens. I could see the distortion at the edges of the photograph. I added it to the folder. By the end of May, I had 27 notices, a running tab of $5,400 in daily fines, and a growing conviction that Karen Whitmore had never actually met a person who knew how to read a deed. I tried the polite route first, the way you do when you still believe the system is staffed by adults. I wrote a letter on plain white paper, no letterhead, no threats, just facts. I attached the 1923 deed showing the county's perpetual easement across Old Mill Road, the 1956 maintenance agreement signed by the county manager and my grandfather, and the current tax map that still listed the road as CR 1417. I mailed it certified with a return receipt requested. The little green card came back signed K. Whitmore, in looping cursive. No response. I tried again in June.
This time I included the North Carolina General Statute 136-96, the one that says a county can't abandon a public road without a recorded resolution and proper notice. I highlighted the relevant paragraph in yellow, still nothing. Just another orange notice taped to the barricade, this one finding me for display of non-conforming mailbox. My mailbox was a standard rural box on 100 yards inside my property line. It had been there since 1978. That was when the tone of the notices changed. They stopped being about the road and started being personal. One cited me for excessive noise because my rooster crowed at 5:12 a.m. Another claimed my cattle odor was drifting into the community and demanded I install an odor mitigation system. The best one arrived in July, a formal cease and desist ordering me to remove unauthorized livestock from view of the community entrance. The livestock in question were 3 cows standing under an oak tree eating grass. I took a picture of them looking confused and taped the notice to the cow's forehead for the return photograph. I still have that picture. Sarah found me in the barn one night staring at the growing stack of orange paper like it was a rattlesnake that had learned to type. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then she asked me very quietly if I was going to let them win. I told her I didn't know how to lose at something this stupid. She kissed my cheek and went back to the house. I stayed in the barn until sunrise, reading property law on my phone with the volume off so the kids wouldn't wake up. The next morning, I drove to the county courthouse. The clerk in the Register of Deeds office knew my family. Her grandmother and my grandmother had quilted together for 40 years. She didn't ask why I needed every document ever recorded on Old Mill Road since 1900. She just pulled the books and let me sit in the back room with a yellow legal pad and a pencil. I found the first crack in Karen's story on page 147 of Plat Book 12. A 1998 resolution from the county commissioners declaring intent to abandon Old Mill Road, provided proper notice is published. The resolution was signed, dated, and stamped. What wasn't there was any proof that the notice had ever been published. I made copies. I kept digging. In the clerk of court's office, I found the minutes from the March 1998 commissioners' meeting. The road abandonment was item 7 on the agenda. The vote was 4-3 in favor, but the minutes noted, public comment period waived due to lack of attendance. I made copies of those, too. By the end of that summer, I had a banker's box full of paper and the beginning of a headache that lived permanently behind my left eye. I also had the phone number of a retired Coast Guard JAG officer named Martinez, who owed me a favor from a night in the Bering Sea when things went sideways and I pulled his pilot out of the water. I called him from the courthouse parking lot. He listened without interrupting while I explained the barricade, the notices, the fake abandonment. When I finished, there was a long silence, long enough for a crow to fly overhead. Then he said very calmly, "They committed fraud on a recorded plat. You've got them. The question is, how bad you want to hurt them." I told him I didn't want to hurt anyone. I just wanted my road back. He laughed, like that was the funniest thing he'd heard all year. That fall, I hired a surveyor out of Raleigh who'd done contract work for the Corps of Engineers. We walked the entire eastern boundary of Willow Ridge with a Trimble GPS unit accurate to 2 centimeters. We found the original concrete monuments under kudzu and poison ivy, monuments that didn't match the pretty colored plat the developer had filed in 2019. The new plat had shifted the whole subdivision 22 feet east. 22 feet that happened to include the stormwater ponds Karen loved to show off on the community Facebook page. 22 feet that sat square on my deed. We kept walking. Under those ponds, according to boring logs from 1974 that I pulled from the state archives, ran an abandoned 42-inch concrete sewer line installed by the Army in 1943 when this whole area was Camp Butner, a training base for the 78th Infantry Division. The line had been taken out of service in 1952 but never properly decommissioned. Title never transferred. It still belonged to the United States government. And it ran directly beneath the Willow Ridge Clubhouse, the pool, and most of Phase 2. I stood in the courthouse basement that night with dust in my hair and a smile I didn't know I hadn't felt in years. The orange notices kept coming. I kept adding them to the folder. By Christmas, the fines were theoretically over $100,000. They started sending them by certified mail now, which meant I had to drive the long way to the post office in town to refuse delivery. The postmaster knew what was going on. Everybody did. Nobody said anything. Sarah stopped sleeping again. The kids started asking why the lady in the green blazer hated us. I didn't have an answer that involved words I didn't want them to learn yet. So I started digging for real. I bought a used Kubota KX040 mini excavator on credit and told Sarah it was for cleaning ditches. I parked it behind the equipment shed where the Willow Ridge security cameras couldn't see. Every night after the kids were in bed, I drove it down the logging trail, parked it in the dark, and started tunneling under the barricade. 6 feet wide, 7 feet high, shored with 6x6 timbers I milled myself from storm-downed oaks. I lined the floor with crusher run, ran a string of LED shop lights off marine batteries, and vented it with flexible duct like a dryer hose so the diesel fumes wouldn't collect. It was slow, dirty, back-breaking work. I lost 20 pounds and most of the feeling in my left hand from vibration. I didn't care. 462 nights. On the 463rd night, the bucket hit something that rang like metal. I thought it was an old culvert. Then the ground gave way and the machine dropped 6 inches. I killed the engine, climbed down with a headlamp, and saw it. A concrete vault the size of a shipping container, lid cracked just enough to show neat bundles of plastic-wrapped cash, and spiral notebooks sealed in gallon Ziplocs. Someone had been using the old sewer line as a bank. Someone whose handwriting I recognized from 100 orange notices. I took photographs with a ruler for scale, sealed everything back up exactly as I'd found it, and drove home shaking so hard I had to pull over twice.
Chapter 3. The Vault. I didn't sleep after I found the vault. I sat on the tailgate of the excavator in the dark tunnel with my headlamp off and listened to water dripping somewhere behind the concrete walls. The air smelled of wet clay, diesel, and something else. Something metallic and old that made the hair on my arms stand up. I kept replaying the image in my head. 37 vacuum-sealed bricks of cash stacked like firewood, each bundle labeled in black Sharpie with dates and dollar amounts. The top bundle read, $48,700, 03/18/22, pool renovation phase 2. The pool had been renovated in 2021. The invoices on the Willow Ridge website shown a cost of $312,000. Someone had skimmed more than the price of a nice house and buried it 42 feet under a fake private road. I took exactly 11 photographs with a disposable camera I bought at the gas station for that purpose. No metadata, no GPS, no way to trace. Then I closed the lid, packed the clay back around the edges, and drove the excavator out the way I came. I didn't go home. I drove straight to the county sheriff's office at 4:17 a.m. and asked for Tommy Hargrove. Tommy and I went to high school together. He lettered in football, I flew helicopters. We hadn't spoken much since graduation, but when you pull a man's little brother out of a burning Huey in Kandahar, the debt doesn't expire. He met me in the parking lot in sweatpants and a department t-shirt, took one look at my face, and didn't ask stupid questions. I handed him the camera and a handwritten note that said, Old Army Sewer Line under Willow Ridge, concrete vault, cash and ledgers. Do not open on scene. Call NCDOJ Public Corruption before you do anything else. He read it twice, looked at me for a long second, and said, You sure you want to do this, Jake? I told him I was sure I didn't want to, but I was doing it anyway. The next 72 hours moved like a fever dream. Tommy called the state DOJ at 8 a.m. sharp. By noon, 2 plainclothes investigators from Raleigh were in his office drinking bad coffee and looking at my photographs. By 4 o'clock that afternoon, a federal magistrate in Greensboro had signed a sealed search warrant for the entire length of the old sewer line and any structures built above it.
By 6 o'clock, a convoy of unmarked SUVs and one very confused septic truck driver, requisitioned for cover, rolled down Old Mill Road with a court order taped to the dash. They opened the vault at 9:42 p.m. under portable floodlights. I wasn't there. I was home pretending to watch a movie with Sarah and the kids. But Tommy texted me a single photograph, an evidence tech holding up a brick of hundreds with a gloved hand and a look on his face like Christmas came early. The final tally wouldn't come for weeks, but the preliminary count was $1,873,400 in cash and 6 spiral notebooks filled with double-entry bookkeeping that would have made an IRS auditor weep with joy. The ledgers were a work of art. Every entry was coded. Landscape Services, Whitmore Consulting, appeared 38 times between 2018 and 2024. The actual landscaping company, Hernandez Brothers, out of Durham, had been paid $41,000 total during the same period. The difference had gone somewhere else. There were columns for pool maintenance, security upgrades, holiday decor, and my personal favorite, Architectural Review Committee gifts. Every line had Karen Whitmore's looping initials in purple ink. They arrested her at 7:03 the next morning. I was feeding the cows when the news broke. Tommy called and said, "Turn on Channel 9." The helicopter shot showed 3 sheriff's cruisers and 2 state troopers in her circular driveway. Karen came out in a silk robe and fuzzy slippers, hair in curlers, hands cuffed behind her back, while a deputy read her rights loud enough for the microphones to catch every word. The chyron on the bottom of the screen read, "Willow Ridge HOA President arrested. $1.9 million embezzlement alleged." Sarah stood beside me in the barn doorway and started crying without sound. I put my arm around her and felt her shake for a long time. The story didn't stay local. By noon, it was on the Raleigh news. By 6 o'clock, it was national. Somebody leaked the tunnel footage, grainy cell phone video of investigators carrying out evidence boxes through my underground passageway, and it went viral under headlines like "Farmer Digs Secret Tunnel, Accidentally Exposes HOA Crime Ring." Late-night shows made jokes, Reddit threads exploded. A producer from Netflix called and left a voicemail I never returned. Karen made bail that afternoon, $500,000, posted by her sister from Charleston. She was released on house arrest with an ankle monitor and a court order not to leave the state. The community Facebook page went private. The waterfall at the entrance stopped running. The holiday lights never went up that year. I kept the tunnel. I poured a concrete floor, installed drainage pipe, ran proper LED lighting and ventilation. I even hung a sign at the entrance that says, "Old Mill Tunnel, established 2024, in neat black letters. The kids think it's the coolest thing on earth. Sarah uses it to get to book club without adding 26 miles to the trip. Sometimes on Sunday mornings, I drive through slow, windows down, radio off. You can still hear the creek above, running steady and patient under all that concrete and lies. It was here before any of us. It'll be here long after. Karen's trial is set for February. The prosecutor says it'll be a slam dunk. I don't plan to attend. I've got hay to cut and fences to fix, and a life that finally got quiet again. Some debts you don't collect in court.
Chapter 4. The Sheriff's Knock. The knock came at 6:07 a.m. on a Tuesday in early June. 3 soft raps followed by 2 harder ones, the way law enforcement knocks when they know you're already awake. I was in the kitchen pouring coffee, still in yesterday's jeans and the t-shirt I'd slept in. Sarah was upstairs getting the kids ready for the last week of school. I opened the door and found Tommy Hargrove standing on the porch in full uniform, hat in his hand, face unreadable. Behind him were 2 state troopers I didn't recognize, and a woman in a navy pantsuit with a DOJ badge on a lanyard. The sunrise was doing that pink and gold thing over the east pasture, and the air smelled like cut hay and impending storm. Tommy didn't waste words. "We're executing the warrant on the sewer line in the clubhouse. Judge wants a neutral third party present in case anything gets complicated. You're the closest thing to a landowner on record for half the route.
You ride with us or you stay here. Your call. I took one sip of coffee, set the mug on the counter, and told Sarah I'd be back by lunch. She looked out the upstairs window, saw the cruisers, and just nodded. She'd stopped asking questions the day the vault photos came back. We rolled out in a four-vehicle convoy. Tommy's Tahoe, the two troopers, the DOJ woman driving a gray Impala, and me riding shotgun in Tommy's truck like it was 1996 and we were headed to a football game instead of about to tear open a subdivision's dirty laundry on live television. The entrance to Willow Ridge looked different in daylight, with the waterfall turned off. The stone sign still read Willow Ridge, a private community, in gold letters, but somebody had taken a can of flat black spray paint to the word private. The barricade was already gone. The county crew had jackhammered it out 2 days earlier and left the chunks in a neat pile like dinosaur bones. A news van from Raleigh was parked sideways across the median, camera guy on the roof getting B-roll. We drove past without slowing. We stopped at the clubhouse first. It was a 2-story faux Tudor monstrosity with fake beams and a 3-car garage big enough for a fire truck. The front doors were already open and 2 evidence techs in Tyvek suits were carrying out banker's boxes labeled in purple marker. I recognized Karen's handwriting from 100 violation notices. The DOJ woman, Special Agent Gutierrez, handed me a clipboard with the inventory list and asked me to witness each item as it came out. I signed my name 37 times while neighbors gathered on their lawns in bathrobes and phone cameras. They pulled out the usual: laptops, external hard drives, a fire safe the size of a mini-fridge, and a cardboard box full of those little bottles of hand sanitizer Karen used to hand out at meetings like communion wafers. Then came the interesting stuff. One tech emerged carrying a framed photo of Karen shaking hands with the governor at the pool ribbon cutting. The glass was cracked clean across her smile. Another carried a Rolodex the size of a car tire. Gutierrez flipped it open, ran a gloved finger down the tabs, and stopped at W. She pulled a business card: Whitmore Consulting, Landscape Design and Community Enhancement. Same tax ID as the HOA. Same mailing address as Karen's house. Tommy caught my eye and gave the smallest shake of his head. Translation: we're just getting started. We moved to the pool house next. The pool itself was drained, concrete stained with years of algae and broken dreams. At the bottom, someone had spray-painted a giant orange $sign. The maintenance shed was locked with a padlock the size of my fist. Gutierrez produced bolt cutters like she'd been waiting her whole career for this moment. Inside were shelves of spare pump parts, chlorine tablets, and behind a false back panel that came off with 2 screws, 3 more vacuum-sealed bricks of cash, and a spiral notebook labeled Phase 3 Kickbacks 2021 to 2023. The dates lined up perfectly with the construction of the houses that now had perfect views of my north pasture. By 10:30, the clubhouse was taped off with yellow crime scene tape fluttering in the breeze like cheap party decorations. A second news helicopter joined the first. Someone started a live stream titled OHA President Busted Live. It hit 1 million views before lunch. Then we went underground. I led them to the tunnel entrance behind my equipment shed. The techs looked skeptical until I rolled the corrugated door up and flicked on the LED strings. Gutierrez actually whistled. "You built this yourself?" I just nodded. We walked single file. Me, Tommy, Gutierrez, 2 techs with evidence cases, and a forensic photographer who kept muttering "holy shit" under his breath every 10 steps. The vault was exactly as I'd left it. They opened it with a gasoline cutoff saw that screamed like a dying animal for 90 seconds. When the lid came off, the smell hit first: old paper, mildew, and the copper tang of money that's been underground too long. The photographer went to work. Flashbulbs popped against concrete like gunfire. Gutierrez read the labels aloud into a recorder. $52,300, gatehouse remodel. $67,800, holiday lighting reserve. $41,000, architectural committee gifts. Every bundle had a sticky note with a vendor name and an arrow pointing to a second, much smaller number, the amount actually paid. The ledgers were worse. 6 spiral notebooks, college-ruled, filled front to back in purple ink. Names, dates, percentages. The board treasurer got 8%. The landscaping committee chair got 6%, plus a new zero-turn mower every 2 years. The social committee got gift cards that somehow totaled $87,000 over 4 years. And at the bottom of every page, always in the same looping cursive, approved, KW. They worked until sunset. By the time we came back up, the sky had gone bruise purple, and heat lightning flickered over the ridge. The news helicopters were gone, the live stream had crashed somewhere around 4 million views. Neighbors stood in clusters on their driveways like shell-shocked refugees. A woman I recognized as the vice president of the social committee was openly crying into her husband's shoulder. Someone else had printed out the arrest warrant and taped it to the community bulletin board with the word thief written across the top in red Sharpie. Tommy drove me home in silence. When he pulled into my driveway, he finally spoke. "You know this ends her, right? Not just jail. Everything." I told him I didn't start digging to ruin one person. I started digging to get my road back. He looked at me for a long second, then nodded like he understood the difference. Sarah met me at the door with a glass of tea and the kids asleep on the couch. She didn't ask where I'd been. She just handed me the remote and said the national news wanted to interview me. I turned the TV off instead. That night I walked out to the tunnel alone. I left the lights off and stood in the dark listening to water drip somewhere far away. The air was cool and clean and smelled like turned earth. I thought about my great-grandfather riding a mule down this road in 1923, about Karen in her silk robe and ankle monitor, about the red-winged blackbirds that would be back in the cattails come spring. I stayed until the batteries in my headlamp died. Some things you don't need light to see.
Chapter 5. The Reckoning. Final chapter. The community center meeting was scheduled for 7 p.m. on the last Thursday in June, the night the board had planned to vote the $38,000 per household emergency assessment to remove the illegal tunnel and restore community security. I showed up at 7:42 on purpose. The parking lot was already full. News vans lined the curb like vultures. Someone had strung yellow crime scene tape across the front doors, but it had been torn down and was lying in the grass like a dead snake. Inside, every folding chair was taken, and people stood 3 deep along the walls. The air smelled of sweat, cheap perfume, and panic. Karen sat at the head table in a navy blazer, 2 sizes too big, borrowed probably, and because her own clothes were still in evidence bags. The ankle monitor glowed red under her slacks every time she shifted. She wouldn't look at me when I walked in. The agenda was printed on peach-colored paper, same as always. Item 7, emergency removal of subterranean trespass structure, assessment vote. Karen had the gavel in her front of her, like it could still protect her. I waited until she called for new business. Then I walked to the front. Same way I had the night I found the vault. Same steady steps. I didn't carry a folder this time. I didn't need one. I laid 3 things on the table instead. A certified copy of the county's June 12th resolution officially reopening Old Mill Road as a public right-of-way retroactive to 1998. A letter from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers confirming federal ownership of the 1943 sewer line and demanding immediate vacation of all structures built atop it without permission, the clubhouse, the pool, and 38 houses in Phase 2. And a single photograph, 8 by 10, glossy. Karen at the pool ribbon cutting, smiling next to the governor, with a bright red circle around the cracked glass over her face. I didn't raise my voice. I just said, "The road's open, the tunnel stays, and the federal government would like its sewer line back." Then I stepped aside so Tommy and Special Agent Gutierrez could lay the arrest warrant on the table like the final card in a hand nobody else had seen coming. Karen tried to speak. The gavel slipped from her fingers and clattered on the floor. Someone in the back started crying. A man near the front stood up and shouted, "You trusted us!" His wife pulled him down, but the damage was done.
The room cracked open like an egg. The board resigned en masse before the sheriff even finished reading the charges. 3 of them signed their letters right there on the peach-colored agenda paper. The treasurer, the one who got 8%, asked for a lawyer and was told he could have one downtown. The social committee chair just walked out and didn't come back. Karen was led away in cuffs for the 2nd time in a month. This time there was no bail hearing scheduled. The judge had seen the ledgers. The clubhouse was padlocked the next morning. The pool stayed drained. The waterfall never ran again. By August, the forfeiture notices started arriving. Houses in Phase 2 went up for sale with bright red disclaimers taped to the for sale signs. Property subject to federal reclamation. Occupancy not guaranteed. The prices dropped faster than the temperature in January. Some families packed U-Hauls in the middle of the night. Others just stopped mowing their lawns and waited for whatever came next. The developer filed Chapter 7 and disappeared to Costa Rica, or so the rumor went. Karen's trial started in February and lasted 11 days. The prosecutor used my tunnel photographs as exhibits 1 through 47. The jury took 4 hours. Guilty on 38 counts: embezzlement, wire fraud, filing false instruments. The judge gave her 14 years and ordered $2.9 million in restitution. She cried when the sentence was read. Nobody in the gallery cried with her. Her house sold at sheriff's auction for 42 cents on the dollar. A young couple from Raleigh bought it. They tore down the McMansion and put in a small organic vegetable farm. I sold them hay the first winter. The tunnel's still there. I improved it over the years, poured concrete walls, installed a ventilation fan, painted a white center line down the middle. The county even paved the last quarter mile of Old Mill Road last spring and put up a tasteful wooden sign that reads, Old Mill Tunnel, Historic Route. Tourists stop sometimes to take pictures. The kids sell lemonade on Saturdays. Sarah and I celebrated our 25th anniversary last month. We drove through the tunnel at sunset with the windows down and the radio off. You can still hear the creek if you listen hard enough. People ask me if I feel bad for what happened to the neighborhood. Some of those folks were just families looking for a nice place to raise their kids. They got sold alive by people who thought rules only applied to little people. I think about that. Then I think about the morning last April when I walked out to the north pasture and found a red-winged blackbird sitting on the exact spot where the clubhouse used to be, singing like he owned the place. I still get waves when I drive through what's left of Willow Ridge. Some are friendly, some folks look away real fast when my truck goes by. Either way, the gravel's exactly where I put it, and the cows come home on time, and nobody's taped an orange sticker to anything in years. The creek keeps running, the tunnel keeps the road open, and every once in a while, when the wind is right, I swear I can still smell wet clay and old money 42 feet down. Turns out peace has a price. I paid it 1 shovelful at a time, and it was worth every night. The end.